You know, that exact moment in a meeting where the air in the room just suddenly gets thick.
Oh, yeah. Everyone feels it.
Right, like two people are talking, technically using the same English language, but it's like they are broadcasting on completely different radio frequencies.
And you can practically see the static in the air. It just ceases to be a conversation.
Exactly. It becomes this, localized Cold War.
And everyone else at the conference table is just shifting in their seats.
Yeah, voices are getting slightly louder, the cadence gets tighter, and literally absolutely nothing productive is happening.
It's like watching two cars slowly drift into the same lane. You know the collision is coming.
You could practically hear the scraping metal, but no one is hitting the brakes. Well, we are spending this deep dive handing you the brakes.
Which is much needed.
We're pulling from this super fascinating excerpt from The Art of Reflective Leadership Listening, specifically focusing on their day 3 materials. The whole mission here today is to equip you with a really specific, actionable framework for transforming those high-tension team conversations. And it's using this technique called reflective listening.
Which is vital, I mean, because we aren't just looking at a script to memorize
Oh,
here.
for sure.
The material forces us to explore the underlying mechanics of conflict. We're going to look at why slowing down our communication actually speeds up resolution.
Which feels honestly incredibly counterintuitive in a hyper-fast business environment.
It does, but slowing down builds immense trust.
So, okay, before we can get to the antidote for these tense meetings, I think we have to establish why the conversations break down in the first place.
Let's unpack that.
The source text points out this passive trap that so many, well-intentioned leaders fall into. It says managers often hear the content of a conversation, but completely miss the emotion and meaning behind it.
Yeah, that trap of prioritizing content over emotion.
Right.
If we look at the psychology of high achievers, they are conditioned to optimize.
Oh, totally. Just fix it and move on.
Exactly. A team member comes in with a crisis, and the leader's brain immediately filters out the stress, the frustration, the exhaustion.
Because they just want the raw data.
Precisely. They just extract the raw data of the problem to formulate a solution.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. Hearing content without emotion. I mean, it's kind of like reading the lyrics of a song, but ignoring the music,
Oh, I like that analogy.
right? Like you get the data, the literal words being said, but you completely miss the vibe, the rhythm, the actual message the person is trying to convey.
You're entirely missing the point.
You're literally reading Born to Run like it's a technical manual.
Yeah, and the music is where the human experience lives.
Exactly.
When leaders only address the data of a problem, team members feel instantly alienated.
Huh. Because the manager thinks they're doing a good job.
Right, the manager thinks they're being highly efficient by addressing the structural facts, but the employee is experiencing a completely different reality.
They just feel dismissed.
Exactly, they feel like their human experience of the problem is being treated as an irrelevant nuisance.
Because your default setting as a manager is, problem solver. You got promoted to your position because you fix things.
You're the fixer.
Yeah. Someone brings you a broken supply chain issue, you look at the raw data, and you immediately try to engineer a solution.
It's a reflex.
But the text highlights something it calls your growth edge. And this is so good. The growth edge here is to make people feel understood without taking over their problem.
Taking over the problem is just such a strong reflex. It feels helpful to the manager in the moment.
But it's actually not.
No, because when you swoop in to fix the content while ignoring the emotion, you actually rob the employee of their agency.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think of it like that.
Yeah, you're implicitly communicating that their feelings about the situation are invalid or, I don't know, inefficient.
Like they just need to step aside and let you handle the mechanics.
Exactly, which creates a terrible dynamic.
The employee came in looking for a sounding board, maybe some guidance, and instead they just got sidelined.
And they leave your office thinking, well, my boss didn't listen to a word I said about how overwhelmed we are.
But I guess they're rewriting the project timeline now.
Right, and the trust begins to fracture right there.
And the static in the room starts to build for the next meeting.
And the irony is that by trying to be efficient and skip the emotional resonance, the leader creates a massive long-term inefficiency.
How so?
Well, a team that doesn't feel understood will just stop communicating nuances. They'll only bring you the most sanitized, sterile data.
Which means you're eventually making decisions with massive blind spots.
Exactly.
So, if focusing only on the content makes people feel unheard and alienates them, how do we practically shift the approach?
Right.
Like, how do you, as a leader, capture both the content and the emotion, especially when tensions are running high and the clock is ticking?
This brings us directly to the core framework of the text.
Yes, the antidote.
The source provides a surprisingly simple yet profoundly effective antidote. It's a formula for reflective listening.
Okay, lay it on us.
It's fact plus feeling plus check.
Fact plus feeling plus check. Okay.
And the text makes a very bold assertion about this specific combination. It states that this type of reflection actually slows conflict and improves trust.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because my immediate reaction as someone who runs meetings is how does slowing down a conflict actually help?
It feels backwards.
Completely backwards. Doesn't slowing it down just prolong the agony of a bad meeting? If two people are clashing, my instinct is to rush through it, resolve it as fast as humanly possible, and just move on.
So we can all get back to work. Rushing is the natural instinct for sure.
Yeah, but we have to look at the neurobiology of what happens when you rush a conflict. Rushing actually fuels the emotional fire. Wait, really? Yeah, when people feel rushed, their brain perceives a literal threat. The amygdala activates, flooding the body with cortisol. Wow, okay. They talk faster, they interrupt, they escalate, and their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logical reasoning, starts to shut down. Oh my gosh. So they literally lose access to the rational part of their brain.
They do. So rushing through the agenda item is a biological impossibility at that moment.
Because you can't reason with someone who physically can't use reason.
Exactly. And that's why this formula, fact plus feeling plus check, it acts as a necessary cognitive speed bump.
A speed bump that forces the rational brain back online.
Yes. By hitting all three of those specific beats, it naturally de-escalates tension because it forces the speaker to pause.
Oh, I see.
When you reflect their fact and their feeling back to them and then check for accuracy, they literally have to stop formulating their next aggressive argument.
They have to process what you just said.
Exactly. They have to process your reflection and then they feel validated, which signals to the amygdala that the threat has passed.
So it short circuits the fight or flight response before the argument can spiral into that slow motion car crash we were talking about.
It does.
The radio static clears for just a second because they finally feel heard.
Exactly.
Okay, so knowing a theoretical formula is fine, but to actually use this to de-escalate tension, I think we need to hear what this sounds like in the wild.
Let's do it.
The source gives us 3 concrete examples of this formula in action.
Let's walk through them. The first example the text provides is it sounds like the timeline changed quickly and that left you frustrated. Is that right?
You can hear the architecture perfectly there.
Right.
The fact the timeline changed quickly. The feeling that left you frustrated. And the check, is that right? It's just so clean.
It really is. The second example is slightly more conversational. You were expecting more clarity, and now you're feeling stuck.
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah. Here, the fact is the expectation of clarity, the feeling is being stuck, and the check is actually implicit in the questioning tone at the end.
Yeah, like you're leaving room for them to answer.
Exactly.
And the third one they give is, so the issue is not just the task, but how the decision was made.
Which is great.
Fact, the decision-making process, feeling or meaning, like the underlying issue, isn't the physical work itself, it's the lack of inclusion or fairness.
And the check is phrasing it as a clarifying question.
Notice the neutrality in all 3 of those statements. You aren't agreeing with their assessment, and you aren't disagreeing.
You're just holding up a mirror.
Right, a mirror to both the lyrics and the music of what they just said.
And the check at the end is particularly crucial.
Why is that?
Because asking, is that right, hands the agency back to the employee.
Oh yeah,
It gives them the power to say, yes, exactly, or no, I'm not frustrated, I'm actually overwhelmed.
which is a huge distinction. I think we need to demonstrate this to really hear the shift in momentum.
Let's try it.
Let's do a quick role play using that first example. I want to analyze how this actually functions in real time. I'll play the incredibly stressed out employee who just found out about a sudden change. And you be the manager using the formula.
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. I just cannot believe the client moved the launch up by 2 whole weeks. It's completely unreasonable. We haven't even finished the QA testing phase, and now everyone is scrambling. And honestly, I am just so entirely over it.
It sounds like the timeline changed quickly and that left you frustrated, is that right?
Well, yes, it's frustrating because the QA team is already stretched thin. Wow. Okay, stepping out of the role play, I could observe the shift immediately.
It's palpable, right?
It really is. As the angry employee, my momentum was pushing forward, like expecting a collision. I was waiting for you to defend the client or tell me to calm down.
You were bracing for resistance.
100%.
You were expecting me to say something like, well, the client is paying us a lot of money, we just have to figure it out.
Which would have forced me to defend my anger and escalate even further.
But by using the formula, I didn't give you a wall to push against.
You just caught the energy and diffused it.
By validating your reality, the conflict just evaporates. There is literally nothing left to fight about regarding your emotional state.
Oh, wait, I have a massive pushback here.
Okay, let's hear it.
What if my facts in that rant were completely demonstrably wrong.
Oh, yes.
Like, what if the client didn't actually move the timeline, but I just misread an email? Or I'm relying on a bad rumor from the marketing department?
It happens all the time.
My immediate instinct as a leader is to jump in and correct the record. I want to say, whoa, the timeline didn't change. You're getting upset over nothing.
Of course.
Don't we have an obligation to be on the same page factually before we deal with feelings? If I reflect a false fact, aren't I validating a lie?
This is honestly the most common friction point for leaders, and it is the exact pitfall the source text warns us about.
Really?
Under the section titled Watch For, the text explicitly says to watch out for correcting details too quickly.
Correcting details too quickly. I struggle with that.
Most people do.
Why is that so dangerous if the detail is objectively wrong?
Because of the brain chemistry we discussed earlier.
Right, the amygdala stuff.
Exactly. When someone is in an elevated emotional state, their prefrontal cortex is compromised.
Okay.
If you correct their facts immediately, you aren't just updating a spreadsheet in their mind. You are telling them that their entire emotional reaction, the panic, the adrenaline, is completely invalid and foolish.
Oh, wow. That is a huge distinction. I'm trying to fix the lyrics, but they are deafened by the loud music.
Precisely. To them, a factual correction in that moment feels like an attack.
It instantly spikes the tension.
Yeah, you become the adversary who doesn't understand their pain. You have to lower the volume of the music before they can even process your correction of the lyrics.
Even if I'm 100% right about the email,
Even if you are holding the printed email in your hand.
that is wild.
But the text provides a direct replacement phrase for that overwhelming urge to correct someone.
Oh, I need this. What is it?
When you feel that visceral instinct to say, actually, you're wrong, you replace it with this phrase, let me make sure I'm understanding before I respond.
Let me make sure I'm understanding before I respond. That is a brilliant stall tactic.
It really is. It buys you crucial time.
Yeah.
It stops you from throwing gasoline on the fire with a premature factual correction, and it signals to the other person that you are taking them seriously.
Like you are leaning in to understand their perspective, not leaning in to conquer their argument,
Exactly. It creates psychological safety.
which is huge.
Once they feel understood, that cortisol level drops, the emotional temperature of the room normalizes, their prefrontal cortex comes back online.
Okay, so they can actually think again.
Yes. And then, perhaps 5 minutes later, or even in a follow-up conversation that afternoon, you can gently address the misread email.
So you do address it eventually.
Oh, of course, you can say, hey, let's look at the client's message together. I think we might have more breathing room than we thought. But the reflection must precede the correction.
The reflection must precede the correction. I love that. That makes perfect sense. You're treating the human before you treat the data.
Exactly.
So now that we understand the mechanics of the fact, plus feeling, plus check formula, and we know to avoid the trap of correcting details too quickly, I guess the real question is implementation.
Right.
How do you turn this from a neat psychological trick into a core leadership habit? Because understanding the theory is one thing, but deploying it when you're running late and your inbox is overflowing is another entirely.
Very true. The source text gives a very specific, manageable assignment under its practice section.
Okay,
It says, reflect back what you heard at least once in every important conversation.
at least once. So what does this all mean for our daily routine?
It means you don't have to overdo it.
Right. It means we don't have to utilize this formula for every single sentence we hear. Doing that would be exhausting, and frankly, you would sound a little robotic.
You would sound like a poorly programmed therapist.
Yes.
The goal isn't to mimic their every word.
It's about committing to acting as a mirror, just once per major conversation. Just finding one crucial moment when the stakes feel high to hit pause and say, okay, the fact is X, the feeling is Y, is that right?
Yep.
That single deliberate intervention can completely alter the trajectory of the meeting.
Because the compounding effect of that single intervention is profound.
How so?
Small actions like one reflective statement in a Tuesday morning check-in or one reflective question during a heated Friday strategy session, they compound over weeks and months.
They build a track record.
Exactly. It fundamentally shifts the environment. Your team learns that your office is a place where they will be heard and understood, not just managed and corrected.
Wow.
That builds a deeply resilient foundation of high trust and low conflict.
It changes the organizational culture from the ground up, just by changing the architecture of how we listen.
It really does.
Let's take a step back and just recap the journey of this deep dive.
Sounds good.
We started by identifying the major trap leaders fall into, which is hearing only the content, the raw data of an issue, while completely missing the emotion and meaning.
Which leaves teams feeling alienated and reduces their agency.
Then we introduced the antidote from the text, the fact plus feeling plus check formula.
A three-step cognitive speed bump that slows down the fight or flight response, de-escalates tension, and validates the person speaking without necessarily agreeing with them.
We looked at concrete examples of how to deploy it, And we highlighted the major warning sign, the urge to correct factual details too quickly.
Very dangerous.
We replace that defensive escalating reflex with the phrase, let me make sure I'm understanding before I respond.
And finally, we looked at the daily practice to make this a habit, committing to using this reflective mirror at least once in every important conversation.
It is a very small behavioral lift with a massive return on investment for team dynamics.
Abs.
It shifts your posture as a leader from someone who swoops in to fix to someone who facilitates understanding.
Yes.
Which actually brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with today.
Oh, all right.
We spent this entire deep dive talking about how to use this framework in meetings, face-to-face, or over a Zoom call where you can at least hear the tone of voice and see the body language.
Right, where you get some context.
But think about how much of our modern work happens asynchronously.
Oh boy. Slack, Teams, email.
Exactly. Text-based communication strips away the music entirely.
It really does.
You are left with nothing but cold, hard lyrics on a screen. If it is this easy to miss the emotion when someone is sitting right across from you, how much unnecessary conflict is being generated every single day because we are rapidly firing off Slack messages without ever pausing to reflect on the emotion behind the text.
The friction of remote work really makes reflective listening even more critical.
100%. If you are managing a team remotely and you sense tension in a chat thread, how can you adapt the fact plus feeling plus check formula for the digital space?
Just typing it out.
Taking an extra 30 seconds to type, it sounds like you're feeling blocked by the design delay. Is that right? That could save you from a massive multi-day misunderstanding.
So true.
The medium changes, but the human need to be understood doesn't. Next time you feel the static in the air, whether in the boardroom or in a group chat, remember, you have the brakes.
Use the formula.
Clear the static. We are so glad you joined us for this deep dive. Try this out in your next tough conversation, and we'll see you next time.